The graph shows the relationship between the number of rows in a friendship bracelet and the time it takes Mia to make the bracelet, including the time it takes to prepare the threads. Determine whether the relationship is linear. If so, write the equation. Okay, so you have to know that linear means straight line. And if I think about connecting these points, they would lie on a straight line. So yes, it's linear. Since it's linear, I can write out the equation y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to backtrack it until I can see where the y-intercept is. So just between these first 2 points, I see that it goes left 2 and down 1. So starting from here, I'm going to go left 2 and down 1 to put that point. I can see that this line is crossing the y-axis at the 4. So I know that's going to be my y-intercept number that is at the back. Okay, so underneath this one, I'm going to go ahead and fill that in with a 4. And since it was positive, I can bring down the plus. M stands for slope. So remember, we keep the y and the x in there. So to calculate the slope on a graph, between any 2 points, you find the rise and the run. Be careful and pay attention to whatever it's counting by, okay, because you want to count by what they are counting by. So I'm going to use these first 2 points that they had on the graph, and I'm going to draw that triangle that goes straight up and straight over. Go ahead and put that line so it looks like a triangle. So my rise here, because the y-axis is counting by 2s, and I just do one jump, that's a 2. My run, I have to do 2 jumps, and it's counting by 2, so I say 2, 4. I'm going to reduce that to 1/2. So they wanted us to tell whether it was linear or not. Yes, it is. It's straight line. If so, write the equation. We got y equals, the slope was 1/2. That goes in front of x. The y-intercept number of a positive 4 goes at the back. How long will it take for Mia to complete 14 rows? Well, I know some of you would see that rows are on the bottom, and you know 14 is right there. So you would try to go up here and kind of like guesstimate what that is. It is so much better since we have the equation that represents a scenario. We're going to put this 14 into the equation where it goes, so I can just use my calculator to get the for sure right answer. So I had to figure out whether 14 should be plugged in for the x or the y. So it's labeled as rows, so I can go to my graph to see, well, was it the x-axis that was labeled as rows, or was it the y-axis that says rows? So notice down here, the x is for rows. So I'm going to rewrite that equation, y equals 1/2, but where they said x, that really stands for rows, I'm putting the number 14. Remember that it's a number beside a variable with no sign, so we are multiplying. And then you have to bring down that plus 4 that was at the back. 1/2 of 14 is 7. So 7 plus 4 gives me 11. They asked how long will it take. So it's not just 11 because it's like 11 what? What are you talking about? So the time for this problem was in minutes. So whenever you're answering a word problem, don't just put a number, give it some meaning. What was the problem about? Mia teaches Bryn how to make a bracelet. Graph these points to show Bryn's progress. 2, 6, 4, 8, 8, 10, 12, 12. Is the time why it takes Bryn to make a bracelet with X rows a linear relationship? Explain. Okay. On this graph, we need to plot these points to see if the points were connected. Would they be a straight line? So 2, 6, 4, 8, 8, 10, and 12, 12. Okay. Whoops. It's kind of hard to see, but for those first 2 points, I noticed that it was just up 1 and right 1. But between the next two, it's up 1, right 2. And then it was up 1, right 2. So right here, at the beginning, the slope was just 1, and then it changed to be 1/2 and 1/2. So therefore, even though it looks so close to a straight line, they did not have a constant rate of change. They didn't have a constant slope between every single point. There was a different slope, okay? The beginning was a little bit steeper, and then here it's a little bit more gradual or more flat-ish. So, non-linear. They said explain, so no constant rate of change. On the back, it says, does each of the tables represent a linear relationship? Explain why or why not. If the relationship is linear, then write the equation. So these top two are very similar to the top two that I did. I'm going to let y'all do that. Adrian regularly deposits money in his savings account. The graph shows the relationship between the balance in his account and the number of weeks he has been making deposits. Find the balance of Adrian's account after he makes deposits for 5 weeks. Okay. Okay. I'm going to help you backtrack it so at least it would be a little bit easier for you to write the equation for it. Because I want to see where the point falls on the y-axis to write the equation for it. So if I'm working backwards from this point, I have to go left 2 and down 2. So that's both negatives. If you divide -2 by -2, you're going to get just a +1, which is like 1/1. So I'm going to go left 1 and down 1 to show you that this is the y-intercept. I'm going to write the equation. So that way, since they're asking about 5 weeks, you can just plug that 5 in for that variable to work it and see what answer you get for y. Okay, so this is non-proportional because it does not go through 0, 0. So I know I'm following this y equals mx plus b. My y-intercept is the easiest thing to fill in. That's where the line crosses the y-axis, and we had a point over here. It's counting by 20s, and it's at that first notch. So fill in plus 20. Now I'm keeping my y, my equals, and my x. So to get my slope, I'm going to do rise over run. And I'll just do it from that first y-intercept point. Okay, the y-axis is counting by 20s, and we only did one jump. The x-axis is counting by 1s. So 20 divided by 1 gives me the slope of 20. So now with this equation, you can go and plug in the 5 weeks for the x. 20 times 5 plus 20 would get you the answer to number 3. How many weeks does it take for the balance of Adrian's account to be $140? You're going to plug that in for the variable y, because this y-axis is labeled as the balance in dollars, and that's what they're giving me here for the 140. So we had y equals 20x plus 20. They gave us the balance, so I substitute that for y. I don't have anything to plug in for x because that's what they're asking about, the number of weeks. weeks is on the x-axis. So you'll have to solve, this is a two-step equation, and if you're not sure how to work backwards and solve it for x, you need to start plugging in numbers for this x until you make this side be equal to 140. Adrian's sister Lara makes deposits to her savings account when Adrian makes his deposits. The balance Y in dollars of Lara's account after X weeks is Y equals 10X plus 80. Does Adrian or Lara have a greater balance after 4 weeks? Okay, so they gave me the equation for Lara. Oh, and we wrote the equation for Adrian over here. So they're asking me about 4 weeks. So here's Lara. Here's Adrian. Y equals 10. They're asking about 4 weeks. And remember that X stands for weeks. So I'm going to be plugging in that 4 for the variable X. So that will help you get Lara's total. And then for Adrian, we wrote out this one, Y equals 20. Then it's multiplied by X, which stands for the number of weeks. They're asking about 4 weeks. And his said plus 20. So you'll just punch these in to see, well, how much is Lara's and how much is Adrian's. And it's asking who has the greater balance. So that should be easy. Last one. A ticket agency charges a processing fee for ticket purchases. The following ticket purchases were made for tickets to a concert. William spent $132